Hello and welcome to Worldwide Camera Exchange. My name is Jonathan Harris and today I'm going to talk to you about what you need to check if you're buying second-hand Leica rangefinder M lenses. Now there are many lenses for the M rangefinder on the market. They've been manufactured since 1954. So what I'm not going to do is run through all the different variants of all the different focal lengths. That will soon be another video. Today I'm just going to talk about the checks you need to run through when you're buying second-hand. So you found a lens online, you found a lens in a dealer's and you want to go and look at it, you want to know what you should check. As I said, they've been made for 50 years, so if you're buying an older lens in particular, you do have to be very careful with what you're buying. You don't want to spend a fortune and end up with something that, well, frankly, is a bit of a mess. So what do you check? Here I've got a 90 f2 built in the 1990s. That's irrelevant. The checks I'm going to run through now will apply regardless of whether you're buying a 1954 Summilux 50 or Summilux 35 or a 2020 50 Noctilux. The checks I'm going to run through now will be the same regardless of which lens you have. So there are three main things you need to check. You need to check the cosmetics, you need to check the optics, and you need to check the mechanics. And if you can give the lens a clear bill of health in all those areas, you'll have a good lens that's certainly worth investing in. So first of all, look at the cosmetics. Take the lens caps off and just have a look over the lens. It's useful to have a nice bright source of light. It'll help you see any little marks a lot more clearly. I will start with the filter rim. Look around the filter rim. Make sure there are no dings, no dents. If the lens has a lens hood, a built-in lens hood that is, just make sure that's not got any knocks, and make sure it's still round. Often, if they've been knocked, they'll be distorted slightly, and as you pull it back onto the lens, it'll wear a mark on the lens. Then have a look on the lens mount, on the bayonet. Now, with older lenses, you're likely to see a few little marks here. That's not an issue. What you're really watching out for are nasty dings, nasty scratches, or massive amounts of wear where the chrome has worn right away and there's a lot of brass showing through. That said, even heavily worn mounts will still work perfectly well. But if you see the wear, it's a bit of a warning sign, and it's saying to you, well, look, just make sure you check everything else out a bit more carefully to make sure it's all okay. With the older black lenses, you can just look very carefully at the black knurling, because after a bit of use, that black begins to wear away, and you get little spots of silver showing through. So that'll give you a good idea how much use the lens has had. That's a little bit more difficult with chrome lenses. The other thing is, let's look at the lettering. When it's brand new, it's very bright white, it's a very bright yellow. If it's been handled a lot, that lettering can get very dirty. Again, that isn't an issue, that's not an issue at all, but it does suggest it's had more use rather than less use. So you've checked it all over, that it looks clean. Then the next thing I would do would be to check the mechanics. There isn't much to really check. The lens has an aperture, it has a focusing ring. And the aperture, pretty straightforward. Just make sure it's stopping down when you look through the lens. Look into it and just make sure that the aperture blades are forming a symmetrical shape. It obviously may not be totally round, but it should be symmetrical. Occasionally, I've come across lenses where one aperture blade may have developed a fault and just doesn't close down with the rest, and you can see that quite clearly when you look through, because the shape is asymmetrical. Then look at the focusing ring. Just turn it gently side to side. Some are tight, some are loose. That is not an issue. If they're overly tight, that could be a sign it hasn't been used a lot and it may need to be serviced. If it's overly loose, that could be a sign that it's had a lot of use and a lot of wear. One other thing to be aware of is if you see a lens that's obviously got a lot of external wear and feels very tight on the focusing, that could mean that it's been worn, been serviced, the helicoid and the focusing has been packed with grease, and that's why it's very, very tight. So if a lens is a worn lens, has overly tight focusing, I'll be a little bit cautious, because that means the repairer has had to pack a lot of grease into the helicoid to make it usable. The other thing you could do is stick it on a camera and just check its focusing. Just hold the camera up to a subject and just make sure the rangefinder is focusing. It's very, very, very unusual to have the focusing incorrect on the lens. 99 times out of 100, if you have a focusing error, it's down to the rangefinder on the camera rather than the focusing cam on the lens. But once in a blue moon, the lens might need adjusting, but that is unusual. So you've satisfied yourself that you're happy with the mechanics. Now the next thing to look at is the one thing you really do need to look at very carefully, and that's the optics. Again, especially with the oldest lenses. Some lenses do have goggles on them. The 135 lenses have goggles that magnify the 90mm frame. The 35mm lenses have goggles that allow you to use with the older cameras and the 50mm frame. So if they've got goggles, just look through the goggles, just as I'm going to now describe how you should look through the lens, just to make sure they're clean. So open it up on full aperture on f2 or f1.4. Hold the lens up to a bright source of light, or alternatively use the torch off a mobile phone. The LEDs on mobile phone torches are very, very strong and very, very good for spotting stuff inside the lenses. So look through and just make sure you can see no misting and no fungus. Misting is, imagine driving through fog with headlights on at night. The fog is illuminated by the headlights. Make sure you can see no misting being illuminated by the light you're shining through, or by the light that's shining through from the front. And fungus is a sort of spider's web type effect across the lens, or little spots with spidery legs coming out of it. That's fungus as well. If you can see fungus, it's an absolute nightmare. Just walk away from the lens. Misting is also a problem with some of the very early Leica lenses, so the 1950s, 1960s lenses. Coatings do begin to break up sometimes, and that can show itself as sort of misting inside. If we were talking about the pre-M lenses, the screw lenses, then misting is a lot more common. The coating deterioration is a lot more common, and not really an issue. But with modern usable M lenses, you really want the optics to be as clean as possible. So I'd recommend, if there's fungus, definitely walk away. If there's a little bit of misting, really you should walk away. The other thing you can sometimes see is a rainbowy effect. That also is an optical fault. So if you look through and you can see what looks like oil on water, so rainbowy effect across one of the inner elements, that again is an optical fault. Just walk away. They cost a fortune to get fixed. The next thing I'll do with the optics is just look at the front element and look at the back element. Again, a strong desk lamp or a mobile phone torch works brilliantly. And what you're looking for is just scratches on the surface. A few light scratches won't affect performance in the slightest, not a problem, but they do affect the resale value, particularly with Leica M. So I wouldn't rule out a lens because it has one or two minor scratches, but do make sure the price reflects the scratches are there. Again, little coating marks, little sort of spots on the coating that won't clean off. Again, quite common, won't affect the performance in the slightest, but will impact the value. So check inside for the any signs of fungus, any signs of optical faults, balsam separation, again that rainbowy effect. You might see a few just little spots of dust inside. That's nothing to really worry about. That's quite common, particularly with big fast lenses like this, like 90 f2s, 50 1.4s, 75 1.4s, quite a common problem. So a few spots of dust, not necessarily an issue. If it's excessive dust, it will impact the value. Just as the scratches will impact the value, but they won't affect the performance. So once you've satisfied yourself that the glass is clean, or that if it isn't clean, the marks are minimal, and that the price reflects the fact that the marks are there, then you're pretty much done. So you've checked the cosmetics, you've got a tick for that. You've checked the mechanics, you've got a tick for that. You've checked the optics, you've got a tick for that. It can be a good idea to run a film through. But I would caution against relying totally upon a film, because a film won't highlight some of the things I've talked about here. If there are one or two spots of fungus inside, you won't spot that with a film. So what I would say is go through these checks I've just talked about. By all means, check it with a film. Focus on infinity, make sure it's as sharp as you're expecting. But do the checks and then follow up with a film. I've been buying and selling live equipment for 30 plus years. It's unusual for there to be an optical fault with a lens that's passed all the other checks that I've just highlighted. Very, very unusual, because they are fundamentally very simple lenses. So, in summary, you've checked the cosmetics, you've checked the optics, you've checked the mechanics, you've got 3 ticks. So, yep, go for the lens at that point there. I hope you found that useful. If you have, or if you have any comments, please like this video or drop the comments in the comments boxes below. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.